For years, she smiled in silence, growing up under the spotlight of a Grammy-winning mother. But now, Kandi Burruss is finally telling her side of the story. Was it courage or calculated timing? This is not just another reality show. This is a daughter reclaiming her voice and shaking the internet to its core. As a Black woman, being in the minority is something you have faced, and that is perfectly okay. You have learned how to connect with people from many different backgrounds. That is something truly special, and I am proud of you for it. You are also not scared to speak up for yourself, and honestly, you should never be. If he is just now learning what it means to deal with strong, confident Black women, then let this be his first real lesson. Now let us talk about what really happened between Kandi Burruss and her daughter Riley. It might surprise you. To the outside world, everything looked picture perfect. Kandi is a Grammy-winning singer and businesswoman, known for her success in music, television, and entrepreneurship. Riley, her daughter, has been in the spotlight from the time she was a little girl. The cameras followed them, the red carpet sparkled, and their public image always looked strong and polished. But as with many families living under the glare of fame, things behind the scenes were far more layered and emotional. Let us take a step back and look at where things started to shift. Kandi Burruss first came into the public eye when she was just a child. Viewers of The Real Housewives of Atlanta watched her grow up season after season. At first, Riley was quiet, soft-spoken, and almost always standing by her mother's side. She seemed like the sweet, reserved daughter who quietly observed everything around her while her mother juggled work, fame, and family. While Kandi was building her empire, writing music, filming reality shows, launching businesses, Riley was growing up in the background. And though she was often seen on screen, she was rarely the focus. That spotlight belonged to Kandi. But as Riley got older, things began to change. She started to form her own opinions, develop her own goals, and understand what life was like growing up as the daughter of someone so famous. And it was not always easy. For years, Riley kept most of her feelings private. She smiled when the cameras were on, kept her head down in the public eye, and supported her mother in silence. But behind those smiles was a young girl learning to balance two worlds, one filled with cameras and expectations, and another filled with the emotional ups and downs of growing up. As Kandi's schedule grew busier, with new projects, business ventures, and endless filming, Riley began to feel the shift. The one-on-one moments they used to have started fading. Rehearsals, studio sessions, and brand meetings filled up Kandi's days. And even though she was doing it all for her family, Riley began to feel a distance growing between them. It was not anger. It was not bitterness. It was just something real that many children of busy parents feel, that quiet sense of being left behind. Riley stayed respectful and quiet for years, but that all changed when she sat down for a rare interview in 2024. At that point, Riley had just graduated from NYU, a huge achievement that should have been the main headline. But what caught everyone's attention was what she shared during the interview. For the first time, Riley opened up about what it was like growing up with Kandi as a mother. Her words were calm, thoughtful, and heartfelt. She made it clear that she respected her mother's hard work and understood the sacrifices that came with her success. But she also shared how she sometimes felt unseen, as if her needs came second to Kandi's endless list of responsibilities. That honesty sparked major conversation online. Some praised Riley for being brave enough to speak her truth. Others criticized her, saying she was ungrateful or airing out private family matters. But through it all, Riley never sounded bitter. She simply sounded like a young woman who had spent years reflecting on her childhood and was finally ready to speak. And her message went deeper than just her own story. Riley explained that even though being Kandi's daughter came with privileges, money, fame, and opportunity, it also came with intense pressure. People often assumed she had it easy, but they did not see the weight she carried to live up to the Burruss name. At one point, Riley had started college studying nutrition. But later, she made a surprising switch to major in music business. That decision raised eyebrows, with many wondering if Kandi had influenced her choice. But Riley was clear this was her path, her choice. While she admired her mother, She did not want to follow in her footsteps blindly. She wanted to build something of her own. She wanted to be seen as her own person. Around this same time, news broke that Riley would be starring in her own reality show, making it in Manhattan. And suddenly, people began to question her motives. Was her emotional interview genuine, or was it a clever marketing move? Was this Riley's way of launching her own brand? Whatever people thought, one thing was certain: Riley had finally stepped into the spotlight, but this time, it was on her own terms. And Kandi? She did not get defensive. She did not push back. Instead, she praised Riley for her strength and honesty. She even admitted that balancing motherhood and a demanding career had been her toughest challenge. That moment of vulnerability from both mother and daughter touched fans in a different way. It was no longer just reality TV, it was real life. This was not just the story of a girl growing up on screen. It was a young woman finding her voice and using it to carve out her own space in the world. Riley was no longer just the daughter standing beside the star. She had become a story of her own. But most people never really noticed her journey until recently. In May 2024, Riley graduated from NYU. That should have been the biggest moment, but what came next grabbed even more attention. In a rare interview, Riley opened up about what it was like growing up with a famous mom. And this is where things got intense. Instead of just smiling and saying thank you, Riley shared some honest feelings that got people talking online. Her words were thoughtful, not angry, but still sharp. She said that although she admired her mother's hard work, there were times when she felt left out. Kandi was always busy, working on music, filming shows, and handling business, and Riley noticed the distance. Even though she never directly said her mother was absent, you could feel what she meant. The bond between them was affected. What stood out the most is that Riley did not say this to blame anyone. It felt like these were thoughts she had been holding in for a long time. Yes, being Kandi's daughter gave her chances that most kids could only dream of: money, fame, and access, but it also came with heavy pressure. Meanwhile, Kandi has been cheering Riley on. She recently shared that Riley is part of a brand new show coming to Bravo called Next G. The news just came out last week, and Kandi is clearly proud. She asked fans to support Riley, saying, "You all watched her grow up on Housewives, now watch her shine on her own." When asked what advice she gave Riley about stepping into this new level of reality TV, Kandi said one simple thing: always stand on what you say. If you said it, mean it, because they can always rewind the footage. 2. Riley often battled with her own doubts. There were moments when she wondered if she truly earned the things she had. Was she good enough on her own? Did people see her, or just the daughter of someone famous? Those questions stayed with her as she grew up, and the answers were not always clear. That kind of pressure is not easy for any young person to carry, let alone one who has been watched by the world since childhood. So, when Kandi told her to stand on her truth, it meant more than just surviving reality TV, it meant surviving life under a microscope. It meant being solid in who you are, even when others try to shape your story for you. And for Riley, it was a message that began to shape her sense of self. Over the years, Riley started to realize she wanted to do things differently. Yes, she respected her mother's achievements. She admired how Kandi built a successful empire out of talent, hustle, and determination. But Riley was not interested in copying her mother's exact path. She wanted to create her own. She wanted to be known not just for who raised her, but for who she was becoming. Still, that was easier said than done. Because every step Riley took was watched, judged, and compared. If she went to college, people assumed Kandi paid her way in. If she landed an internship or got involved in a new project, people whispered that it must have been because of her connections. It was as if she could not take a single step without someone tying it back to her mother. That kind of criticism can crush some people. But for Riley, it became fuel. She pushed herself harder, not to prove the haters wrong, but to prove to herself that she was more than just a shadow. She focused on her studies. She explored different career paths. At one point, she entered college planning to study nutrition. But later, she switched to music business, not because of pressure, but because she found her own interest in the creative and commercial side of the industry. And yes, it was the same industry her mother dominated, But Riley made it clear this was her decision, not Kandi's. She was not following in her mother's footsteps. She was building her own path beside them. And that choice, stepping into a space that would naturally invite comparisons, took courage. It meant walking into rooms where people might already have opinions about her. It meant staying grounded in who she was, even when people questioned her every move. Kandi saw all of that. And while she was always proud of her daughter, what truly impressed her was Riley's ability to handle the pressure with quiet strength. She did not need to shout to be heard. She did not rely on drama to stand out. Riley had learned how to move with purpose, and that kind of growth was something Kandi deeply respected. By the time Making It in Manhattan was announced, the world was finally ready to see Riley not just as someone's daughter, but as a young woman with her own story to tell. The lessons her mother taught her had become a foundation. Riley knew the importance of owning her voice, being honest, and never hiding from her truth, even when it made people uncomfortable. And in doing so, Riley had become a reflection of everything her mother stood for: strength, grace, and authenticity, but in her own unique way. This was not just the next chapter of Riley Burruss's life. It was the beginning of her own legacy. And the most powerful part? She earned it. Then came another unexpected twist in Riley Burruss's journey, one that made people stop and start asking questions. When she first entered college, Riley had chosen to study nutrition. It seemed like a solid, respectable path, and it was clear she wanted to do something that felt separate from her family's fame. But later, she made a big change. She switched her major to music business. The internet did what it always does, jumped straight into speculation. Almost immediately, people began asking if her mother, Kandi Burruss, had influenced the decision. Was this Riley's way of slowly following in her mother's footsteps? After all, Kandi had made a name for herself in the music industry for decades, earning Grammys, writing hits, and running businesses. So when Riley made the switch, many assumed it was the beginning of a direct path into her mom's world. But Riley was quick to speak for herself. She made it clear this was her choice, not her mother's. Yes, she admired everything her mom had built. Yes, she had learned a lot just by watching her. But she wasn't trying to become the next Kandi Burruss. She was trying to become the first Riley Burruss. And that meant doing things her way. She said that while nutrition was interesting, her passion began to shift as she explored more of her personal interests and long-term goals. Music business caught her attention not because it was her mother's world, but because it allowed her to mix creativity with strategy. Riley wanted to understand the business side of entertainment, the behind-the-scenes work that helps artists grow, build, and sustain real careers. Her honesty was refreshing, but the timing of her comments raised eyebrows. Not long after she shared her story publicly, rumors started flying Riley had a reality show of her own in the works. Suddenly, what seemed like a vulnerable, honest moment started to look, at least to some people, like a clever marketing setup. Was this deeply personal interview just a setup to generate buzz for her new show? Was this part of a bigger plan to step into her own spotlight? The questions came fast, and the internet was divided. Some people said the timing felt too clean, too polished. They wondered if Riley had carefully planned this moment to make her public debut. Others said the opposite, that even if it was perfectly timed, Riley still deserved credit for opening up and taking control of her story. After all, how often do young women, especially daughters of celebrities, get to speak their truth in their own words? Whether people believed it was real, rehearsed, or somewhere in between, one thing was clear: Riley was no longer content to stay in the background. She was taking bold steps toward building her own identity. And she was doing it on her terms, her own, and starting fresh, without anyone else leading the way. Even though Kandi supported her, she was not the one in control this time. But with the spotlight came pressure. The moment Riley entered the scene, fans began comparing her to other Bravo kids, like Gia Giudice and Brooks Marks, who had already stepped into the world of business and social media influence. Some people thought Riley had the most potential of them all. Others felt she needed more personality. But what made her different was her focus. Riley was not chasing attention online or following fashion trends. She was focused on the business side of music. Every step she took seemed thoughtful and smart. Whether people liked it or not, Riley was making moves quietly but powerfully. The wildest part? Kandi had always been the queen of strategy, knowing how to stir buzz, promote her name, and keep things under control. But now it looked like Riley had picked up those same skills. The way she shared her story, with perfect timing and calm energy, it almost felt like the student was becoming the teacher. Then came another twist. People began whispering that Kandi's decision to leave the Real Housewives of Atlanta had less to do with new career plans and more to do with family. Some insiders said the constant pressure from her home life finally clashed with her filming schedule. And it might have been Riley's interview that gave Kandi the wake-up call. She did not deny the rumors. In fact, during one of her interviews, Kandi admitted that balancing family and career had always been her hardest challenge. When Riley finally opened up publicly, it hit Kandi deeply. "It made me stop and think," she said. "It pushed me to do better." That honesty shook the internet. Kandi, a woman known for her work ethic and ambition, openly admitted that being a mom was her most difficult role. And as everything began to settle, one thing became clear: this was not just a TV moment. This was a turning point in the Burruss family's journey. Kandi had always stood for power, hustle, and big dreams. But now Riley was shifting that spotlight in a new direction, softly, gracefully, and without drama. The show was no longer just about Riley's next step. It was about her message: "I am more than my mother's shadow. I am my own person." What Riley shared did more than spark gossip or headlines. It made people think about their own families. Viewers started reflecting on times when they felt overlooked or when their parents tried their best, but still missed key moments. That is why Riley's words hit so hard. She was not attacking her mom. She was giving a voice to all the kids who never got the chance to speak up. And Kandi responded not with anger, but with grace. She publicly thanked Riley for being honest and said their bond had actually grown stronger because of it. For longtime fans of the Real Housewives of Atlanta, this meant everything. We had spent over a decade watching Kandi and Riley grow, stumble, and evolve right in front of our eyes. But now we were seeing something far more real, growth that was deeply personal, off-camera, and completely unscripted. And the most surprising part? Instead of tearing them apart, this chapter brought their family even closer. Riley finding her voice was not just a moment, it was a clear sign she was stepping into adulthood. And Kandi? She welcomed it with open arms. Not many families on reality TV can say that. But this is what made it so powerful. Riley's honesty did more than launch a show. It gave her the chance to reshape what it means to be the child of a reality star. She was no longer just a quiet figure in the background. Making it in Manhattan officially marked the moment Riley took full control of her own narrative. And the world was paying attention. As the episodes aired, viewers saw a whole new side of her, witty, focused, and fearless. She opened up about her dreams, her dating life, and her growth as a young woman. And through it all, Kandi stood by her, not front and center, but always in her corner. That bond took time to build, but what we saw now was a beautiful balance of support and independence. This was not just a story about Riley growing up. It was a turning point for the entire Burruss family. A bold new chapter. A reminder that even long-standing legacies can and should evolve. Because sometimes, telling the truth is what brings healing. And stepping out of the shadows is the only way to truly shine. Now let me ask you, did Riley cross a line by sharing so many personal moments? Or was she simply claiming her own power? If you think the Burruss family drama ends here, think again. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more.